I'm Rosalia Rivera. This is About Consent, and I'm a consent educator and sexual literacy advocate. I help parents learn how to educate their kids about the topics of body safety, boundaries, and consent. I'm talking about pediatricians, but really about anyone in authority. So anyone who has authority over someone else. There is a power dynamic that can be abused, frankly. In my consent parenting group a couple of days ago, I had posted an article from Darkness to Light, which is an amazing organization that gives information for parents also about child abuse prevention. But in this article, it was specifically talking about how to prepare your child for a medical exam. And this can range from 2 years old to 18 years old when they're still under your care legally as a guardian, right? And so how do you prevent anyone from being able to take advantage of your child's age and stage and obviously trust in a medical professional? And so in the group, I had posted the article and I ended up receiving a question about this article was great because it talked about what you need to know, but it didn't give specifics of like what you could exactly do. And so they wanted to get some more nitty-gritty details. And so to give you the gist of what that answer was, is that kids need to be empowered with their rights before they go to a medical doctor. Now, of course, at every stage, that's different. At some ages, it's much easier to explain it than at others, but it's something that is a process, right? Just like everything else in teaching your kids. When they're little, you can explain it in a very age-appropriate, basic way. And as they get older, if they're starting puberty and they're going to be going in to see the doctor on their own without you, it's also really important for them to know and understand their rights and how a doctor should proceed and what the expectations are for the doctor. I actually have a consent letter that I offer in my courses. And there are different consent letters. There's one for a medical team, there's one for a teacher, there's one for a nurse, there's one for a coach, there's one for a babysitter, so that you are letting the people in your child's life know that you are teaching consent, that you have certain expectations of how any kind of physical contact needs to happen, and also educating your child on what they should be expecting from the figures of authority in their life, and that definitely includes a pediatrician. So essentially what that means is that your doctor should know that, number one, they always have to inform a child. So that means letting them know that they have to explain what they need to do and why they need to do it and how they need to do it. And then they need to ask for consent. They need to ask for permission to do that thing. And then the most important part is that they have to wait for the child to give an okay, an affirmative yes, not a coerced yes, one that is informed so that they understand what's going on. And if the child is too young and they aren't fully understanding, that obviously the parent can be the interpreter and help them to understand what the communication is, and to also let the doctor know that your child is being educated about consent and they're becoming consent empowered. And on the flip side, letting the child know that they also need to know what to expect from the doctor, that the doctor needs to inform them that they need to ask for consent and that they need to wait for the child's reply. And if the child says no, that they cannot proceed, right? So all of those expectations need to be set for the child as well as for the doctor. When we talk about creating consent culture, it's across the board. Like, I'm not just talking about telling your kid, hey, your body is yours. I'm talking about a shift in the way that we communicate, a shift in the way that we let adults know what the expectations are of the way that they manage and handle and have interaction with our children, and that we inform the children of what those expectations are with figures of authority. In my course, I have a specific class just about this, just about how you can learn to explain to your child how to deal with a figure of authority in a way that is obviously going to be beneficial for the child and allow them to interact in the world without, one, being fearful, and two, with being cooperative and collaborative in the situations when it's necessary, like on a team or in the classroom or at a doctor's office for their own safety, but knowing that they have rights and that they have the right to exercise those rights. So all of that is really important to educate your children on. It's not just about saying your body is yours, because that's a very open and broad concept, which sounds like it's very straightforward. But if you're not explaining how to actually enact those things, then you're not fully empowering your child. So I hope that that makes sense. And one of the questions that I had for you is this something that you've ever had an issue with? Have you ever gone to the doctor's office with your child and the doctor managed things in a way that you weren't totally comfortable with and you weren't sure how to address it? I've seen situations where adults, very well intentioned, will, come up and just start to tickle a child because they're like trying to be fun and develop a instant trust with the child. And so they tend to think that that's okay. It really actually isn't okay, but a lot of people do it well intentioned, but it's actually setting up a child to think that it's okay for that adult to just automatically touch them. And it's not, even if it's a doctor or someone that is close, but they haven't really developed that relationship or haven't really asked for the consent to do that, right? Like someone that they don't really know, like a doctor, because they don't see them all the time, especially if a child is young, or if you're switching to a new doctor, or if you're going to a new specialist, right? This consent letter can go when you're going to the dentist. It can go when you're going to an eye doctor. Like it's for anywhere that you go and anytime that your child has to deal with a figure of authority. So I want to just stress that it's important to know that predators can be anyone. It can specifically be the people that you trust the most, because they're the ones that have access to your child, that can ingratiate themselves with you. And that's why I'm so, I don't want to say obsessed, but it's probably borderline obsessed with informing parents about what the concept of grooming is, which is unfortunately has a really weird name, because most parents will think about it meaning like brushing your teeth or combing your hair or taking a shower. But grooming in this particular case is predatory grooming, which is the strategy that potential abusers and predators use to break a child's boundaries down, to gain their trust, to gain access to the child through gaining trust with the family. It can happen long term. So there's a lot of things that you should know to look for. I mean, this doctor in this particular case, and even Larry Nassar, who was the doctor, this case came out a while ago, but was abusing kids for years, including the gymnasts that were under his care. And the parents were even in the room when it was happening because they were just so trusting and weren't looking at exactly what was going on. They were maybe sitting down in the chair in the room, or they were just allowing the child to go in with the doctor on their own because they're at that age where they can start doing that. And there's that trust factor, right? And so when we don't prepare our kids with, one, knowing that they can whistle blow and say what happened immediately to obviously prevent a repeat situation, or to inform their child of their rights and the doctor of what your expectations are, and that you're doing consent education, you are at a greater risk. And there are segments that are even at a greater risk that predators look for. So there's a lot to learn, and the reason I'm telling you this is not to scare you. Make sure that your child is no longer a target. And that is golden. Like, you want to make sure that, a predator who is looking at your child as a potential target, that your child is doing and saying specific things that will take them off of the list of being potential targets. Thanks so much for watching, and stay consent empowered. Have a great day.